What's good, my dudes? Today I'm back with another model kit review, and today we're going to be taking a look at the... Be sure to check out my last video, which was an unboxing for the Dynazenon and the Grid Knight, so check it out if you want to see all the runners and all that. Also, minor spoilers for SSSS.Dyznazenon in this video, so if you haven't seen that or you don't want to be spoiled, click off this video now and come back at a later time. Something else important to note, this is a premium Bandai kit, so it's not exactly the easiest kit to find in the wild, but I did manage to snag this guy on Zen Market. Not sponsored, unfortunately. Spoilers, it wasn't exactly cheap. But was it worth the beating that my wallet had to take? Let's find out. Before we get into the Dynazenon itself, we gotta talk about its individual components first. Starting off, we got the Dyna Soldier. This humanoid robot has a reptilian style head and some articulation in its lips, but they're quite limited for the most part, although you can get some decent poses out of it. Not much surface detail on here, but there are a ton of seam lines on the arms due to how straightforward the build is. Unfortunately, this is a recurring theme with other components as well. Not like it matters too much either way. Most of the seam lines are covered up in Dynazenon and Dynarex form. What's special about this component in particular, apart from having posable limbs, is the fact that it can combine with other components. The second component we'll be taking a look at is the Dyna Wing, which is a plane. Granted, one of a interesting design. It also has a decent amount of surface detail as well as an extra part that kind of works as an action base adapter, so you can put it on a gunpla action base or other bases of a 3.5mm peg like Figma stands. It also has wheels on the bottom of these guns, so you can actually roll them around as well, but it does have to be a particular angle for them to really work. You can also attach them to the back of the Dyna Soldier to get the Dyna Wing Soldier. Next up, the Dyna Striker. It's a car, but if you squint hard enough, you can actually tell that these are just front-facing, straightened out hands that are used in the Dynazenon on the front of the car, and the wheels on this car do allow it to roll a little bit. It can also once again be combined with the Dyna Soldier to get the Dyna Soldier Striker, which surprisingly enough, despite its huge arms, it has no issues balancing itself at all. And of course, like in the anime, you can actually perform the Striker Storm Alpha Beta attack, which also surprisingly can balance itself perfectly fine. So as you can see, the joints on the Dyna Soldier itself are actually quite tight, and they can actually handle a lot of weight, but they don't really feel like they're gonna snap at any time either, which is really nice for posing and stability and all that. Lastly, you got a Dyna Diver, which is supposed to be some sort of submarine, but it's obviously just a pair of legs just stuck together. You can flip these covers out on the legs to reveal the missiles on the back. There's also a hole here where you can actually mount it on a display stand with a 3.5mm hole. It's the same one that's actually used when it's fully transformed to Dynazenon. As expected, the Dyna Diver and the Dyna Soldier can be combined, sort of. All you have to do is simply flip up these yellow handles on here, and the Dyna Soldier can hold onto them like this. You can also attach the Dyna Soldier the same way it's used during the transformation into the Dynazenon, but this looks really goofy. I wouldn't really recommend it. It's an option if you really want to. Now that that's out of the way, let's put this bad boy together. As if it was ripped straight out the screen, this is easily the most anime accurate model kit of the Dynazenon out there. Its huge chunky proportion towers over plenty of kits, and in this case action figures as well. Here it is next to the Figma Grid Knight, Moderoid Dynazenon, HG Amazing Gundam Barbatos Lupus, and the MG Narrative Gundam. So the thing here has quite a bit of shelf presence when it's fully combined. Another great thing is that there's no parts forming needed to keep the Dynazenon together, but you do have to be a little bit careful when holding it. The connection between the torso and the waist is quite strong for the most part, but if you do hold it by the torso, do be a little bit careful because the legs are not exactly light, so they can fall off. Now, despite all the bulk and the transformation gimmick being present, this kit actually does have a pretty nice range of articulation. Upwards and slightly downward head movement, full rotation at the neck, forward and backward movement in the wings, guns that fold onto the shoulders, and upward movement on the wings. Full rotation on the shoulder, slightly above 90-degree shoulder raise, full rotation and double jointed bend in the elbow, rotation in the wrists, side skirts flipping up, full rotation in the waist. Legs can be lifted up forward and backward, rotation in the thigh, double jointed knee bend, hinge and ball joint in the foot. It also comes with 2 sets of different expressive hands and the Dynasaber beam effects, as well as some extra gimmicks like wheels flipping out and those leg missiles. So it's perfectly capable of doing all those crazy poses it does in the show, like the Dynazenon full burst missile kick, and some cool Dynasaber poses. Now of course we also have to take a look at its other form, the Dynarex. So here it is in Dynarex form, and honestly, it's a little bit underwhelming. Now, don't get me wrong, just like the Dynazenon, it does look incredibly anime accurate, down to the way it combines, but that's also where my issue lies. I kind of wish that Bandai took a few creative liberties here, because the tail itself is incredibly finicky to work with. The connection itself is not the most secure. It kind of just clips on, and because of how heavy the tail actually is, sometimes it just, when you move it around too much, it falls off. When I was trying to pose it for this video, it actually fell apart 3 times already. The most you can really do in terms of posing here is just stretching out the arms and legs, adjusting the wings, moving the waist a bit, bending the tail, and opening the mouth for Rex roar. The main limiting factor for Dynarex is that the lack of posability in the tail, and the fact that you can't really move it around that much, particularly at the base, does really limit a lot of options in terms of posing. I think part of the issue isn't just the model kit itself, but also the way that the Dynarex is designed, particularly the way everything just comes together. I tried doing a lot of poses while I was making this video, but I found them to be just incredibly awkward, or something just got in the way. But it does command a lot of presence on the shelf with its size and design. When you do manage to get this thing in the pose, it's actually quite solid though. The joints themselves are tight enough to actually hold a lot of the heavy parts in place, but doesn't feel like it's going to break or anything, and you don't really have to worry about it coming apart after it's on the shelf. Now, if you're somewhat aware of the merchandising situation in Dynazenon, you would know there's one big elephant in the room that we haven't really addressed yet. And how exactly does the SMP compare to the Moderoid? I don't want to spend too much time talking about the Moderoid here, but if you do want me to do a review of this in the future, consider telling me in the comment section below. Long story short, the Moderoid is a lot smaller than the SMP. It's a little bit larger than the average gunpla high grade, less anime accurate with more surface detail and rounder proportions. Its hands are also way smaller proportionally compared to the rest of its body. I do find that the Moderoid does have a better Dynarex form, as it's a lot more solid, but I do hate taking it apart and changing form, so I'm not going to show it here. Another thing that's important to note about this that's kind of related is that the kit isn't exactly the easiest to find either, because Good Smile Company, the ones producing the Moderoids, isn't as big of a company as Bandai. The frequency of re-releases tend to be pretty limited, and they only really release products unless it's like something incredibly popular. So finding this in the wild might be like a task in itself, and if you don't want to pay scalper prices, good luck. So the question is, which team should you be on? Team SMP or Team Moderoid? And the answer is, I know it's a cop-out, but it depends what you're looking for. If you want just something huge and that's just a general all-around good kit, you probably want to go with the SMP Dynazenon. I think just comparing them as model kits 1-to-1, the SMP is just way better in general. However, the one advantage that the Moderoid has over the SMP is that it scales a lot better with Good Smile Company's Figma line, which has figures like Grid Knight and Gridman. So if you want something that looks really nice as an ensemble cast together, go with the Moderoid. When it comes to kits based off Dynazenon, this is probably the best you're gonna get. Whether it's articulation, minor parts forming on both transformations, just great all-around anime accuracy, this is the full package. Granted, the only real model kit competition is the Moderoid. One thing I didn't mention in the review is that both the Moderoid and the SMP do come loaded with color correcting stickers. If you do decide to paint them, do be careful because both kits are made entirely out of ABS plastic. The transformation for both forms is quite straightforward and simple. The Dynazenon holds together really well, apart from the legs, which can fall off because of how heavy they are. I would recommend holding it by the waist to prevent that. I also found that when you move the legs, you should probably hold them by the part of the thigh that connects to the waist. I had a few instances where the upper thigh just wouldn't stay together and it would fall apart because the parts just wouldn't stay together very well. For the two transformations, the Dynarex is definitely the weak link of this kit. It's kind of a brick and I couldn't really find any good poses for it, but if you do have this kit and you know some good poses for it, please do let me know in the comments. You also get a small amount of accessories along with the dragon sculpture that's featured in the intro of the anime. Sorry this video took so long to make. It's a weird combination of me being a little bit too ambitious with the structure of the video as well as procrastination really slowing down the editing process. The next video will come out sooner than this one. Granted, that's it can't be that hard to do, so stay tuned for that. I will be covering Grid Night and Goldburn in a separate video, and once again, if you have any feedback or questions, please leave it in the comments down below. I do read all of them, mainly because there's not many of them to begin with. Other than that, thanks for watching and do consider subscribing for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.